Good evening. So we're in the middle of Iggeres HaKodesh, Siman Daled. The topic, the larger topic over here, is, there are a number of topics that are converging and coming together. Tzedakah, Galus and Geula, Avas Hashem, Bris Milah, and as is the way of Chassidus, everything is becoming one. We're connecting all these different dots. We started off the letter with a Maimer Chazal, Ein Yisrael Negol and Ella B'Tzedakah. And the question is, what is the connection between Geula and Tzedakah? Why is it that specifically Tzedakah is what brings the Geula? So Alter Rebbe from there moved on to talking about, it seems to be a tangent, but it's actually not, that there are two different types of Avas Hashem. There's Pnimiyus Alev, and there's Chitzoniyus Alev. Pnimiyus Alev is a much deeper, higher, greater level of love and greater level of emotional attachment than Chitzoniyus Alev. Chitzoniyus Alev is the feelings that you have which are based on logic, based on experience. By way of example, so I'm sure this has happened to everyone, that, there's a simcha tonight, there's a bar mitzvah tonight, there's a chasana tonight, Allah Chaim, should I go, should I not go? In your mind you're thinking, maybe yeah, maybe no, I should go because of this, but maybe not because I'm lazy, or maybe not because I have to be up early tomorrow. And then whatever decision you arrive at, you might end up going, you might end up not going. If you're like me, you'll probably end up not going, more likely than not. There's a Shir Torah tonight. Should I go? Should I not go? Maybe it's too cold to go tonight. I see everyone who's here tonight decided to come anyways, despite the cold. But imagine that you're marrying off your daughter. Someone comes to you and says, "Oh, by the way, do you plan on attending the wedding?" Do I plan on attending the wedding? Yeah. Did you think about it? Did you think about whether you were going to, maybe you have other stuff to do that night. Maybe you're too tired. Maybe you have to be up early the next morning. And you're like, Meshugana. No, I didn't think about it. Not even for 1 second. Why didn't I think about it even for 1 second? Because the fact that I'm going to attend my daughter's wedding has nothing to do with thinking. That's where I am, and that's where I will be. And I don't have to think about this, and even if I have every reason in the world why not to be there, I will still be there. Because I'm not going because of a reason. I'm going because that's me. And that's where I essentially want to and need to be on that night. That's the difference between Pnimiyus Alev and Chitzoniyus Alev. Chitzoniyus Alev is the you in life that you engage in, and that you do, and that you're connected to, but they're all logical. They're for reasons. They're al pi das. And Pnimiyus Alev are those things that are essentially who you are. And that is what we're trying to accomplish, is to arrive at that level of Avas Hashem, of Pnimiyus Alev, which is an essential love, which is an extremely, extremely powerful love. An extremely powerful attachment which goes beyond seichel. It's not about, what did Hashem do for me today? What did He do for me yesterday? How big is Hashem? Let me make a calculation. Is it worth it for me? Is it not worth it for me? But it's above and beyond. It is this essential love for Hashem, which is at the core of your very being. I think I've mentioned this before, this Vart that I heard in the name of a Chassid. We say, V'yahavtas Hashem alikecha, b'chal levavcha, b'chal nafshecha, b'chal meidecha. So b'chal levavcha, okay, with all your heart, got it. B'chal nafshecha, all your soul, even if you have to go on Mesiras Nefesh. What is b'chal ma'oidcha? What comes after b'chal nafshecha? What does b'chal ma'oidcha mean? So the Chazal gives different pirushim what b'chal ma'oidcha means. One pirush is b'chal ma'oidcha means with all your money, if you're willing to give up your money for it. Because some people, their money to them is more valuable than their life, and therefore, after we say you have to love Hashem more than your own life, we have to say, and also more than all your money. The Mishnah gives another pirush, b'chol midah, shemoided l'cha. But I heard Chassidus Shavart. What is the literal translation of the word ma'od?
A lot.
Ma'od means very.
Very,
Very, right?
I thought it was a lot.
So if you have to Hashem Alekecha, you have to love Hashem b'chol ma'odcha, you have to love Hashem with all your very. What does that mean? That means we have various needs in our life, and we do many things, we have different attachments. But the goal is that the very should be reserved for Hashem. I eat, but I don't eat very much. I eat what I have to eat. I work, I don't work very much. I work. The very has to be reserved for Hashem. The ma'od, b'chol ma'odcha. I love Hashem very much. I learn very much Torah. I do mitzvahs with very much hislahavos. The very has to be reserved for Hashem. And why is that? If you're in a place where you're relating to Hashem with an avol from Pnimiyus Halev, then taka, that's very. Then everything is very powerful. Think about the difference between the feelings that you're feeling when you're going to the wedding, which during the day you were thinking, should I go, should I not go? You decided to go, okay? And then the wedding, which you didn't have to think about at all, whether it's the wedding of your daughter or your sister or your best friend. One, you're participating somewhat, and one, you're participating very much. You're participating fully, emotionally, because your Pnimiyus Halev is invested. That is the very. And our relationship with Hashem has to be from Pnimiyus Halev, which is from a place of B'chol Ma'odcha. What's stopping us? What's stopping us from accessing this Pnimiyus Halev? So Alter Rebbe says the problem is, yes, there's an arla. There is an arla. The arla, what is the foreskin that's covering the Pnimiyus Halev, that's covering the bris? The arla is the fact that I'm using my very for other places in Olam Haza. That my attachments, that where am I attached to? Where am I connected to? Where? Vu lig ich and Taivus in Olam Haza. So you have to get rid of the arla in order to reveal the Pnimiyus Halev. But, as the Alter Rebbe says, in the arla there are two parts. There's the arla gasa, there's the thick skin, and then there is the thin skin, the klipa daka. There's the arla gasa, the thick skin, and the klipa daka, the thin skin. And both of them have to be removed. The arla gasa is the mila, the klipa daka, the thin skin, the membrane, is the priya. And Alter Rebbe explains that's the difference between the arla gasa is the big taivus. The arla daka are the small taivus. And the arla gasa is something that is easy for a person to remove. But the arla daka, the thin taivus, the refined taivus, the edla taivus, for that we need umal Hashem alekecha lavavcha. For that we need Hashem's help. To remove them completely, we need Hashem's help.
Arla gasa is a certain one?
Arla gasa what? Not necessarily. The grubba taivus, the lowly taivus, sitting down and gobbling down what? Zeli basar v'sevi yayin, right? Steak and wine, like yeah.
Still not great.
Right.
What's the
We all know that grub. We spoke about this last week. The small taivus are broccoli.
Broccoli?
Yeah, the small taivus is classical music. In other words, the refined taivus. Those are the. But as Dr. Rebbe says, what's to make a difference whether it's a thick taivus or a thin taivus? At the end of the day, this is a covering. It doesn't allow for the bris to be revealed, to emerge the pnimius nekudas halev. For that we need Hashem's help. What's interesting is that we know that Avram Avinu was commanded the mitzvah of bris milah, and he was commanded that all of his descendants have to have a bris. And therefore, technically speaking, Avram today probably has hundreds of millions of descendants, not only from Yishmael, but also from Keturah. And really all of them should be getting a bris, because the bris was given to Avram and all his descendants. However, and that's what the Rambam Paskins. The Rambam Paskins that the Bnei Yishmael and Bnei Hagar, al pi halacha, they have to get a bris, because they're descendants of Avram Avinu. A bris at 8 days. However, the Gemara says, interestingly, that although all the descendants of Avram Avinu have to have a bris, only Bnei Yisrael have the mitzvah of Priya. Milah is for all the descendants of Avram, and Priya is only for the descendants of Yitzchak Bnei Yisrael, which is very interesting. And based on what we're talking about over here, we can understand that. Because the idea of Mila, the idea of being a refined individual, not having grubbe taivas, unrefined, gross, coarse taivas, is unbefitting for a descendant of Avraham Avinu, even if he's not a Yid. It's unbefitting for a descendant of Avraham Avinu to have a orla gasla, to have that thick foreskin. But the klipa daka, we need Hashem's help for that, and that only is for Bnei Yisrael. The idea of even getting rid of the small, the edla, the thin taivas, those that are not so egregious, that's something which is necessary in order to reveal the Pnimius Alev, but at the same time also, it's not something which is within the human capability to do it alone. We need Hashem's help, and that is something which is reserved for Klal Yisrael. They say a story that there was once a city that was looking for a Rav. And they came to the Maggid of Mesrich, Reb Dov Ber, and they asked the Maggid, we're going to get different candidates for a Rav. How are we going to know who's the correct one? How do we know who's the one that we should choose? So the Maggid told them, I'll give you a sign. Any candidate for a Rav shows up, you ask them this question. Ask them the following question. How do I identify someone who's a Baal Gaiva versus someone who's not a Baal Gaiva? And if that person attempts to give you one answer, don't hire him. And this is what happened. They opened up they went on ZipRecruiter, or they went to some sort of employment agency, and they started getting candidates, and every single person would come and they would say, how is it possible to distinguish between someone who's a anav, a truly a anav, and someone who's a Baal Gaiva? And every time they asked the question, as soon as a person opened up their mouth and started to try to give an answer and explain to them how to identify the difference, they dismissed him, as per the instructions of the Maggid. Until one day comes along, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Haradak. Menachem Mendel of Haradak was one of the senior Talmidim of the Mezritcher Maggid. For a while, for a few years, the Alter Rebbe also, after the passing of the Maggid, the Alter Rebbe considered him to be his Rebbe until he moved off to Eretz Yisrael. Later on, in Iggeres HaKodesh and Siman Chav Zayin, we have a whole letter that the Alter Rebbe penned to the Chassidim in Eretz Yisrael after the passing of Rabbi Mendel of Haradak. Eventually, he moved to Eretz Yisrael. He moved to Tveria. So Rabbi Mendel of Haradak applied for the position to be a rabbi, and they asked him, so how can we tell the difference between a Onav and a Baal Gaiva? And Rabbi Mendel gave a krechts. He groaned and he said, it's impossible to tell the difference. And I'll tell you why. You can have a person who looks like a tzaddik and with a broken heart and seems to be so meek, but you should know that this person is an incredible Baal Gaiva. And then you can have another person who comes across as strong and as assertive and confident, and yet you should know this person is the ultimate anav. There is no way to know, just from looking superficially and externally from the outside, to know whether a person is an anav or a Baal Gaiva. And they hired him. What's pshat? You can have a person who's holy and who's pious, seemingly a broken person, but at the end of the day, what does it mean to be a Baal Gaiva? What it means to be a Baal Gaiva, by Chassidim, I don't know whether it's by all Chassidim or just by Chabad, the biggest insult that could be hurled at someone. Imagine you're sitting with someone by Fabrengen, and one Chassid, wants to insult the other person. So what does he call him? What's the dirtiest name he can call him? A yesh. You know what a yesh means?
Somebody.
You are. You are? That's the biggest insult that we can level against someone. You're a yesh. You want to say, this person's a yesh. This person, he is. What does that mean? What do you mean you are? What do you mean he is? That's a lie. There's nothing other than the Eibishter. This perception of self and self-importance and self-centeredness is the ultimate klipa, that's the ultimate gaiva that there is. So you can have a person who comes across as a chassid and a tzaddik and a broken-hearted person and everything, but at the end of the day, what does his life revolve around? What is his life about? Life is about himself. It could even be his desire to do a mitzvah. Talk about a klipa daka. But ultimately he's thinking about himself and not about Hashem. That's the klipa daka. Meaning that the taivas that he has are not gross, disgusting taivas which you'll read about in the tabloids. They're very refined taivas, but ultimately it's all about gaiva, it's all about yeshus. And then there's a person who is filled with strength and filled with assertiveness and confidence. But at the end of the day, what is the center of this person? It's all about the Eibishter, it's all about Hashem. Mashiach is going to be the greatest onav. Mashiach is going to learn Torah with the Hayomim says that the Mashiach is going to learn Torah with Moshe Rabbeinu and the Avos, because we know that Mashiach is going to teach a higher level of Torah even than that which was revealed by Har Sinai. And at the same time, he's going to learn with the simple people, Anashim Pshutim. Mashiach will be the greatest Anav that there is. Which is why he's a descendant of David HaMelech and Yehuda, both of whom represent this idea of Bittul and Anivus. Chassidus quotes many times the pasuk in Tehillim where David HaMelech says, "Im lo shivisi v'doimamti," complete like a doimim. That was the bittul of David HaMelech, like a doimim, like a rock. And yet, what do we say about Mashiach? Yilchem melchemes Hashem. He's going to wage the battles of Hashem. You can't wage the battles of Hashem from a place of meekness and a place of inconclusiveness. Because the klipa daka, that's what fools us so many times. It's very easy to recognize whether or not a person has the Orla Gasa. Now you can see, you look at a person and you see, is this person steeped in lowly taivas or not? That's something that you can see about a person. But the klipa daka is something which is very, very hard to differentiate. But and bottom line is, if you don't get rid of the klipa daka, at the end of the day, what are you about? You're still about yourself. And if you're still about yourself and not about Hashem, that covers up the pnimiyus alev of the nefesh elikis and doesn't allow the b'chol mo'edcha, the veriness, that great love of the nefesh elikis to be revealed. When this love is revealed, the pnimiyus alev, that is the definition of geula. That is geula. As we'll see later. Pada b'shalom nafshi, the idea of the revelation of your deepest self, the ability to be who you are, not to do what my logic tells me I have to do and what I'm supposed to do and to conform with society or to conform with what's imposed upon me from a million different things, but to do, by way of example, when this expression, when you work at what you love, you never work a day in your life. I messed up the exact quote, but something along those lines. When you love your job, you never work a day in your life. So everyone works. Most people work. Geula is when what you're doing is not only because logic says I need a job, because I need money, and because I need to support my family, and because for any other reason that you have. When you're able to live with your passion, really with who you are, that is the ultimate geula. That is the ultimate geula. That's what we learned about up until this point. So when Mashiach comes, we're going to have Umal Hashem Elikechas Levavcha. That's when we're going to get rid of the entire Orla, the Orla Gasa and the Klipa Daka, the thick and the thin, and we'll be able to have this Pnimiyus Alev. Now the Rebbe concludes and says what we learned last week. That's why it says that Ein Mashiach ba ela behesach hadas. Mashiach comes only behesach hadas. So the Gemara says, interesting Gemara. The Gemara there says there are three things that come behesach hadas. Hesach hadas means without awareness. So Mashiach and a Metzia. Metzia. A lost, you don't find, what?
A bargain.
No, we call a bargain a Metzia, but today,
That you find.
yeah, walking, if you're going in the street looking to find valuable something, someone lost a ring or find $100 bill, you'll never find it. When it comes, it's without any expectation whatsoever. It's behesach hadas. And the Gemara says, akrav, a scorpion sting. Okay, today we don't have scorpions around, not maybe in other places, not over here. But a bee sting. Ever happened? A person got a bee sting and they're like, oh, I was waiting for it. I was thinking it's going to happen, and boom, it came. Or if I can give an example, you never see a mouse when you're expecting it. If anyone who's ever had the experience of walking into their kitchen or into the dining room and suddenly a mouse scampers by, so it's out of the blue. It's behesa chadas. You're not thinking about it. So Mashiach is also behesa chadas. What does that mean, Mashiach is behesa chadas? We spoke about this last week. What does it mean, the Mashiach? So we're not expecting it. We're not waiting. Yidden are sitting and expecting and waiting for Mashiach all the time. What does it mean? In 1985, so by Farbrengen, the Rebbe said that recently he got a letter from a woman who he doesn't know. And the woman wrote to the Rebbe that she got a chain letter. Those of you who are a little older remember what these things are. Today we don't have chain letters anymore. Today you get a WhatsApp. Please forward it to 10 people or else, and don't break the chain. And if you break the chain, what?
You have emails like that.
Or emails, right? Most of them, hopefully, your spam filters catch, but sometimes some of them come through. But in the USPS, there is no spam filters. And there was this concept back in the day called chain mail. Chain letters. Chain letters, so someone wrote to this lady, you have to, with a content of a letter, and said you have to send this off not to 10 people. And if you send it off to 10 people, that's great, and you'll have a lot of good luck. And if you don't send it, terrible, catastrophic things are going to happen to you. And in fact, the letter writer, the woman didn't know who she got this letter from. But it wasn't, the letter writer wrote that we know anecdotally that the people who broke the chain letter and didn't send it on, they suffered terrible results, and the people who did were rewarded for it. So send it on. So this lady freaked out. And she wrote a letter to the Rebbe, asking the Rebbe, what should I do? I'm scared. Should I do I have to write? Do I have to continue on this chain letter to another 10 people? So the Rebbe said, obviously I told her to rip up the letter and not to think about it ever again, and not to worry about it in any way, shape, or form. But afterwards, I started thinking to myself, the Baal Shem Tov says that everything that a person sees or hears has to be a hira b'avodas Hashem, has to be some sort of lesson in the service of Hashem. What's the hira b'avodas Hashem from this for me? Here I'm receiving a letter from a woman I don't even know. The Rebbe says it's a message for me, and also there's this idea that everything can and should be utilized for avodas Hashem. So the Rebbe said, I came to the conclusion we all have to start writing chain letters. What should we write in the chain letters? The Rebbe said every one of the Chassidim should write a letter to 10 friends, and the Rebbe said only 10, not more. The Rebbe says people are going to hear what I'm saying, and they're going to spend the next 3 weeks just writing letters to everyone. The Rebbe says no, just 10 friends. The rest of the time spent learning Torah. And what should you write in the letter? So the Rebbe quoted over there that there is a chidah in the Sefer Midbar Kedemes, where the chidah says, he quotes a medrash, the Yalkut Shemaini, that Yalkut Shemaini says that bizchus hakivui, l'shuas hakivisi, bizchus of us, hoping and waiting for the redemption, that itself makes us worthy of the Geula. We will be redeemed from Galus bizchus, our anticipation and our hoping and our waiting for Mashiach. And the Chidah says that actually, if you look in Shemona Esrei, we see this clearly, because it says, "Es tzemach David avdecha me'eretz hatzmiach," which means asking Hashem to bring Mashiach, v'karnei taram yishusecha, to uplift the fortunes of Mashiach. And how do we finish? Ki lishuascha kivinu kol hayom. We're saying, Hashem, please bring Mashiach. Why? Because we await for Yeshua all day long. And as the Rebbe pointed out, we don't say Ki lishuascha kivinu kol yom, that we wait every day for your Yeshua. Ki lishuascha kivinu kol hayom. What does kol hayom mean? All day long. Kol yom means every day. Kol hayom, we wait for Mashiach. Kol hayom, all day long. So what are we saying to the Eibishter? We're saying, please bring Mashiach. Why? Ki? Because we're waiting for it. What does that imply? That the actual, the lishuascha kivinu kol hayom is a reason why that a semach davdavdcha me'eretz hatzmiach. That's what the Chidah writes. And the Rebbe also quoted a Radak. There's a Radak in Shmuel where it says that the whole Magefa, in the end of the Sefer Shmuel, talks about a very tragic epidemic that hit Klal Yisrael at that time, which culminated with the purchase of the Har HaBayis, and that's when it ended. And the Radak says over there that the reason for the Magefa was because Here we are, hundreds of years after the Yidden that entered Eretz Yisrael. Mishkan and Shili was already gone, and the Yidden weren't davening and demanding the binyan davening for and demanding the binyan Beis Hamikdash, which shows us how important it is to constantly be awaiting and demanding and hoping for Mashiach. And the Rebbe asked that everyone should send it out, this letter, to 10 of their friends, and request that they should send out the letter to 10. Yeah, I recall this. I was a boy under the age of bar mitzvah at that time. I remember they printed up at that time. They printed up al nusach, which contained the chida and the radak, and for some of you probably remember that you have an envelope and a stamp and a post office, and everyone wrote 10 letters to everyone. That's what they were asked to do. So we did that.
Well, where do you get demanding? I mean, you hope for the Mashiach, but to demand the Mashiach, that doesn't sound right.
Okay, topic for a different day. But there are plenty of makars for that also. But the point is, the point the Rebbe was trying to get across is this idea that Mashiach has to be front and center on our mind all the time. And this is not a Lubavitch thing, this is a Jewish thing. And b'schus hakivui, b'schus of this, Mashiach will come.
You said that the Chafetz Chaim is to have
Chafetz Chaim, right?
suit,
Had a suitcase, special suitcase with the clothing for Mashiach comes, right? Chafetz Chaim was an absolute, what's the word I'm looking for? Example, paragon of this idea of waiting for Mashiach in a real way, constantly waiting Mashiach. I think I might have mentioned this story once about, there was one year in Eretz Yisrael that Sukkot fell out on Shabbos. The first day of Sukkot fell out on the Shabbos. There was someone over there, an Avrech in Koilel, and he found an esrog. This is going back probably around 100 years ago. Now the esrog had a little psul. It was a beautiful esrog, but it had a little psul in it. The thing is that this psul, which invalidated it, was a psul that only mattered on the first day of Yom Tov. We know that mitzad l'kachtem lachem b'yom harishon, there are certain things, the idea of l'kicha tama, certain halachas that are connected to the tmimus, the completeness of the Arba Minim, only apply on the first day. So in Chutz La'aretz, we do it the first 2 days. But in Eretz Yisrael, it's only the first day. So this esrog was fine to go after the just by way of example, if an esrog has a little hole in it, so you can't use it the first 2 days, but afterwards it's fine. I don't know exactly what the psul was, but there was a psul. And he thought to himself, I may as well get this esrog, because the first day of Sukkot is on Shabbos. Shabbos anyways, we don't shake wool of an esrog. So I need it for the last 6 days. So he didn't know what to do. So he went off to the Rav of Yerushalayim, at that time was Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, and he asked him a shaila, and Rabbi Yosef Chaim started screaming at him. He says, you're an Avrech in Koilel, and you have a question of this sort? He says, what's the question? Of course you can't buy this esrog. In the few days remaining up until Sukkot, there's no question Mashiach is going to come. And we know when Mashiach comes, so then we take the rule of an esrog, and the Mikdash we take it also on Shabbos. And you're going to come with your treifa esrog, your pasla esrog, you're going to come to the Beis HaMikdash? How are you even asking that question? How are you even asking? But this is the true Torah approach. The true Torah approach is that a person is constantly anticipating, waiting, and yearning for Mashiach. So what does it mean, Ein Mashiach ba ela b'hasach hadas? Which is the opposite of everything we're saying up until now. That the Mashiach is coming b'schus. We're waiting for it. So the Rebbe explains that what does it mean b'hasach hadas? The b'hasach hadas means that Mashiach is about beyond thinking. The whole idea of Mashiach is put your thoughts away. By way of example, what we spoke about earlier. Are you going to your daughter's wedding? That's Hesach Hadas. You never thought about it. You're going to the wedding and you never thought about it. You never waited and you never made a cheshbon, should I go, should I not go? And if you did, you need to find some help. If you actually sat down and started thinking and calculating and considering and debating and deliberating whether or not you should go to your child's wedding, no, it's Behesach Hadas. It's beyond us. the whole concept of the Geula is that we're going to be experiencing Hesach Hadas. The whole concept of Mashiach is coming is only the idea of Hesach Hadas. Right now, our connection to Hashem is all calculations. We live in our heads. We're busy. We're too. What's the word I'm looking for? Cerebral. And Mashiach comes. We move beyond that. We move to a state of Hesach Hadas, and that is the idea of Geula. When we finally get rid of the Arla, Gasa, and the Klipa Daka, and finally we arrive at a state of Hesach Hadas, a state which is higher than Hesach Hadas, higher than Das, when our essential connection to Hashem is revealed. This is just recapping what we did last week. But we added a lot of ideas, a lot of oisias, but this is basically what we learned up until this point last week. Now, we know one of the ideas in Chassidus is that whatever is true of the nation as a whole is also true of the individual also. There's microcosm and there's macro and micro. So we have this week, Shabbos Parshas B'Shalach, we have this idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which plays such an important role in our life. And why is that? Not only because it's important to remember that which happened 3,000 years ago, but mostly because Yetzias Mitzrayim is a very important part of our Avodah. The nation leaving Mitzrayim is something which we're supposed to play out in our own personal life on a daily basis. And the same thing is with everything. Tonight is Tu B'Shvat. Baruch Hashem, we have a beautiful spread of fruit, which is Le'ili Nishmas, the yard site tonight of Ephraim ben Chaim. What? Ephraim ben Chaim, whose neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
The schus of, Tu B'Shvat is the idea of pleasure in Avodas Hashem. We have the 7 fruits. So it's interesting how it used to be. They used to say that in traditional Yiddishkeit, you talk about there's chita and sa'ira, there's wheat and barley, and that's staple, that's necessary. And then there's luxuries. What is luxuries? Is fruit. They're sweet, they're tasty. Today we live in a world which is a little the opposite way around, which is fruit is a staple of the diet, that you have to have. Wheat and barley, today it's almost like you're a nerd if you eat gluten anymore today, it's out of style. But upon him, the idea of Tu B'Shvat is the idea of having pleasure in Avodas Hashem, of sweetness, and as opposed to bread, which is considered to be a necessity, fruit are considered a luxury. So Tu B'Shvat, the idea of Rosh Hashanah Li'Ilanos, which is the idea of the Rosh Hashanah for the Jews' pleasure. So Baruch Hashem, we have over here Le'ili Nishmas, Rabbi Ephraim ben Chaim. We have here a lot of different fruit and food which give us a little pleasure in our Limud HaTorah tonight. But what is the idea of Tu B'Shvat? Why are we celebrating Tu B'Shvat? We really care about the trees. We're big environmentalists. Yeah, I mean, okay, there's the idea of Al Tashchas, definitely it's the Ibra Hashem's world, and we know that you're not allowed to cut down a tree taka. But ultimately, everything that we celebrate is about within ourselves. There's the tree within us, whatever that means, with the different significances of what that means. We know that if the world is made up of doimim, semeach, chayim, edaber, so Tu B'Shvat is when we celebrate semeach within ourselves. Right? Which means that to a certain extent we're defined by the semeach within ourselves. Semeach, the tree within ourselves. I'm not going to get into what that means. In other words, the Sfarim talk about it, but the bottom line is, the idea of Chassidus is everything is within ourselves. And that's not only about past events. It's not only about past events, that everything that happened in the past continues to happen again within our person. And by the way, another event in this week's Parsha, which is very related to this, is the war with Amalek, which is something else that we have to remember every single day. Zachar Eis Asher Asa L'cha Amalek. And how do we battle Amalek? Amalek that tries to cool us down from Yiddishkeit. Amalek can only cool off Chetzeni Yisalev. Pnimi Yisalev, the idea we know that I'm brought on the Sfarim that says about Amalek, Asher Karcha Baderech, that Amalek made you cold. So what can you? I can call you. You have chveis. Your nephew's best friend's uncle is making a l'chaim. I can cool you off from going there. Can I cool you off from going to your kid's chasana? I can't. Pnimius halev can't be cooled down because Pnimius halev is who you are. How do we? What we're talking about over here in our in this letter also is the solution to Amalek. When I'm fully invested and emotionally invested in something, Amalek doesn't stand a chance. But just like this is true about past events, the same thing is also true about future events. Mashiach is going to come. Mashiach is going to come and is going to bring a Geula to Klal Yisrael. But this concept of the Geula of Mashiach, which by the way is distinct from Geulas Mitzrayim, it's a different concept. The Geula from Mitzrayim is one thing, and the Geula of Mashiach is another thing. Spiritually, it's a different dynamic. That's something also which plays out on a daily basis. We can experience Mashiach on a daily basis. In fact, there's a sikha from the Rebbe where the Rebbe says, it says, Kol Yimei Chayecha, right? Laman Tisker Shem Tzeis Chameres Mitzrayim. So we say, Kol Yimei Chayecha Hayamim, Yimei Chayecha Hayamim, Kol Yimei Chayecha Aleilis, and Chachamim Memrim Yimei Chayecha Elam Haza, Kol Yimei Chayecha L'Havli Mesa Mashiach. So in a deeper sense, what is this passage telling us? That we have to be able to relive the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, whether it's day and whether it's night, whether it's spiritually, we're in an era of spiritual revelation, or whether it's the era of spiritual darkness. The idea we have the capability of personally leaving our Mitzrayims, our limitations. Come along the Chacham and add Kol Yimei Chayecha, all the days of your life, even while you're in Galus, Lahavi Liyameisa Mashiach. You can even also arrive at the Geula of Mashiach. In other words, we can experience Mashiach in our personal lives. So there is in the macro, there's in the larger sense, the Geula of Klal Yisrael, which will happen in Yirtzeh Hashem very, very soon, and which we're waiting for and hoping for. But we also get to experience our own personal Geula. And this idea is illustrated by another story, actually with the same Mendel Vitebsker, Menachem Mendel Vitebsker, who we mentioned earlier. So we mentioned that Menachem Mendel Vitebsker. So in 1777, he went up to Eretz Yisrael. He led an aliyah, a group of Chassidim that went up to Eretz Yisrael, and they settled in the holy city of Tveria. While he was in Eretz Yisrael, at a certain point in time, there was a deranged individual who took a shofar and went up onto Har HaZeisim and blew the shofar. Mashiach said. And the news spread like wildfire that Mashiach had come. To the point that it even arrived in Tveria. For those of you who are familiar a little with the geography of Eretz Yisrael, that's a nice
90 miles.
It's a nice journey, and this was, I believe, a little before Egged buses were invented. Yeah. Someone comes into the Mendel Vitebsker into his room.
Who came?
Someone comes to the Mendel Vitebsker, knocks on the door. Hey, Rebbe, Mashiach's here. Mashiach came, Har HaZeisim blew the shofar. So the Mendel stood up and he went to the window. He opened the window and stuck his head out and gave a sniff and said, nah, doesn't smell like Mashiach. Mashiach is not here. By the way, interestingly, according to, one of the things about Mashiach is Moirach V'doin. The Gemara says that he'll be able to judge using his smell. In fact, how did they know that Bar Kochva wasn't the real thing? Was because he didn't have that quality of Moirach V'doin, of being able to judge. There's a special connection between smell and Mashiach, without getting into it over here. But the question that's asked is, why did he have to stand up and go to the window? He was sitting by his desk. He should have given a sniff and said, Mashiach's not here. And the answer is, Mendel Vitebsker, he's sometimes called Mendel. He's called his,
The silver guy.
Yeah. Either he was from Vitebsk and ended up in the Haradaka, all the way around. He's known as either the Mendel Vitebsker or the Mendel Haradaka. In his room, it smelled like Mashiach, because Mendel lived a life, a Mashiach-dika life. And therefore, in his room, it smelled like Geula. It had a Geula aroma. So how was he to know whether Mashiach came? He had to go stick his head out the window and smell on the street and see did the Geula arrive there also. In his room, Geula was already there. The question was, had the Geula arrived outside? And this brings out this idea that we can all experience Geula in our own personal lives. What is Geula? This is a question that you can answer. What is Geula?
It's removal of the...
Right? The revelation of Pnimius Alev.
But how could you do it?
So for Mashiach comes, that's when the Klal Yisrael as a whole is going to experience it. But as individuals, we can experience this. And when is that? Let's look inside. We're going to start on page 210.
How many lines from the bottom?
How many lines in the bottom? 5. V'chein. Up until this point, he spoke about Geula HaKlalos. Now the Alter Rebbe says, V'chein, and also Kol Nitzutz Prati, every single spark, individual spark. Mahashchina. In other words, the Klalus Hashchina, which is in Golus, as we spoke last week, the general Shchina, will go out of the Golus when Mashiach comes. And every individual spark, Shebenefesh Kol Echad Yisrael, which is in the heart of every single Yid, Yoitzeis Mahagalos V'Hashivya. When does the Yid experience Geula? When does the spark go out of exile and out of its captivity? Lefisha, temporarily. B'chaye Sham Zutfila v'Avodah Shebelev. This is davening. Avodah Shebelev. It's interesting. He says Lefisha b'chaye Shah. We know that in Chazal they talk about davening as Chaye Shah, as compared to Torah, which is Chaye Olam.
Chaye Shah means what? Temporary.
Temporary life.
So what's Lefisha means?
So we experience Geula temporarily every day. When we're engaged in the Chaye Shah. What is tefillah? Tefillah is temporary life. Life is the revelation of the Pnimius Alev, and we experience that temporarily for half an hour, 2 hours a day. That's the Chaye Shah, that's the life, that's the hours of the day when we're truly alive is when we daven. Chaye Shah, that's when we're truly alive.
When have you davened the whole day?
Sorry?
When have you davened the whole day?
That's a good idea. Yeah. This is when a person davens and Avodah Shebelev Mo'umka Deliban serves the service of the heart from the depths of the heart. Bebechinas Nekuda HaPnimi is serving Hashem from the very center point of the heart. Haniglis Ma'arla, which is revealed from the Arla. V'oila Lamaila, and goes up above, and rises above the Dafka Boy to connect to Hashem B'tshuka Aza with a tremendous desire. Bebechinas leman chayecha, as we mentioned, it says umal Hashem es levavcha, v'eslevav zarecha. Hashem will circumcise your heart. Leman chayecha. What is leman chayecha? Simple pshat. Leman chayecha means in order that you should be able to live. It's simple pshat. Yeah. In other words, Mashiach comes, Hashem will circumcise your heart, and that you should love Hashem leman chayecha, and this will give you a good life. And the deeper pshat leman chayecha, that we love Hashem because He is our life. That's the deepest love possible. And this relationship with Hashem that we are striving to arrive at during davening is also is something which is higher than das for the person. This is above and beyond what a person can understand and what a person can contemplate. This is a gift. The ability to experience Pnimius Alev is a gift. And the idea of a gift is a very important idea over here. What is a gift? There's two types of gifts. One type of gift is not really a gift. Most gifts that we give are transactional.
How come? You don't pay for it.
Why am I giving you a gift and not you a gift? But usually when we give someone a gift, because we're expecting something in return. We got something in return. We will get something in return. It's part of the give and take of a relationship. So is that really a gift?
No.
Nah, it's actually closer to a business transaction than it is a gift. Okay, it's unwritten, obviously, but it's not really a gift. What is a real gift? What's a real gift? A real gift is something which comes from Pnimius Alev. When I give a present to my son, do I ask myself, why am I giving him this present? No. I can ask different questions. I can ask, is it good for him? Maybe for chinuch purposes? That's a valid question. I can ask, can I afford it? That's a valid question. But the question, why am I giving my son a gift, is not a question. Why? Because he's my son. If I'm going to give you a gift, Reuven, right, I'm going to ask, why am I giving Reuven a gift? Why am I not giving it to Sasson? And I have to have a reason. So that's not Hesach Hadas. When you give a gift to your child, it's Hesach Hadas. Hesach Hadas means there is no reason why you're giving the gift. It's Pnimius Lev, it's because that's where my heart is. That's what I want. So this is the idea of that when Hashem gives us a matana, which is the meaning Hashem, it's a reflection of Kaviyachol Hashem's Pnimius Halev. And that awakens when Hashem reveals, it's the gift of Hashem is revealing His Ahava, His Pnimius Halev to us, and that causes Ma'aras Bechinas Panam El Yonim. This is when Hashem shines His face, His Pnimius, on us. K'meshikos of Yoir Hashem Panav Elecha, the pasuk says, Yoir Hashem Panav Elecha, Hashem shines His face to you. K'meshikos, as the pasuk says, Umal Hashem Elokecha, the Eibishter. This is something we get from the Eibishter. So ultimately, what are we looking for when we daven? When we're looking to daven, when we're davening, we're looking for a Geula experience. Davening every day is a Geula experience, the revelation of the Pnimius Halev. The difference is, when Mashiach comes, it's going to be a revelation of the Pnimius Halev for all the Klal Yisrael, and it's going to be permanent. And davening is for the individual, and as he says also, it's Lefisha, B'chayisha. It's something which is temporary till after davening goes away, but ultimately, in concept, it's the same idea. The idea of the Gili of the Pnimius Halev. Alright, so this is also, remember the psukim that we spoke about 2 shiurim ago. L'cha amar libi bakshu panai. As panecha Hashem avakish. The heart says, bakshu panai, seek my pnimius. This is what we're looking for, the pnimius. Because as panecha Hashem avakish, I want the pnimius of Hashem. And for the pnimius of Hashem, we need our pnimius. And also shir hamalis mimamakim kirosich Hashem. The idea of calling out Hashem from the oimik, the pnimius alev. And this is what we're striving for when we get to daven. So yeah, there's no question that we daven, we think about the greatness of Hashem. And therefore, our love for Hashem and our feelings for Hashem during davening can be somewhat transactional, can be al-pidas. But what we're really striving for in davening is reaching an emotional space wherein our connection to Hashem is not a logical one. It's not bound by logic. It's not based on logic. But what we're really looking for when davening is to be able to access that pnimius alev, that nekuda, the very center of the heart, where Yid is essentially connected with Hashem.
But tefillah is not instead of korban?
And therefore?
Therefore, when you're davening, it's you connect it to Hashem, but it instead of the korban to do to Hashem.
So if this is what tefillah is, then clearly that was what karbanos are, because it accomplishes the same thing. So he doesn't talk here about karbanos, but clearly it would be the same thing. Ramesha, can I bother you to read me a chumash shemais? So this is connected to something in this week's parsha. I actually think we spoke about it last year, which of course means that Reuven remembers it.
Just have to refresh my memory.
Ever said the joke before about that the Rabbanim have a handbook, because a Rav has to say a speech every single Shabbos. Imagine a Rav is a Rav for 30 years, 40 years.
Still need to
He's expected to come up with Chiddush every single year, every single week. That's a little ridiculous. So there's an expectation that after a certain amount of time, the Olam forgets, and you can repeat the same thing. So, how long?
How far?
How far apart does it have to be? Yeah.
Good joke once every 2 years. A good speech once a year. Fata every week, they forget it each week.
So almost, they say a joke you can say once every 6 months, and a story once a year, and words of Torah, of wisdom, you can say twice in the same drasha. Yeah. And as you get older, Baruch Hashem, you might probably say it 3 times in the same drasha also. Yeah, so in this week's parsha, it says, the Mitzrim are chasing Klal Yisrael. The Eden become aware that Mitzrayim Nesei Achareim, the Mitzrayim is traveling behind them. And what does it say? Vayitzaku b'nei Yisrael al Hashem, the Yidden scream out to Hashem. So what does Rashi say on this? Vayitzaku, says Rashi, Tofsu umnus avoisam, the Yidden, they grabbed onto, they seized the profession of their forefathers. Regarding Avram, it says, in other words, davening was the profession of the forefathers. By Avram, it says, it says that Avram, in the place that he stood, which is a reference to his davening. By Yitzchak, regarding Yitzchak, it says, that he went out to daven in the field. By Yaakov, it says, Vayifka b'mokim, that Yaakov davened in the place. That's the Rashi. So question number one the Rebbe asks on this is, we know the most basic rule of Rashi is that he doesn't try to insert himself where unnecessary. If he says something, he's addressing an unsaid question. There's a problem, there's an issue that he's resolving. If there is no problem, there is no issue, Rashi doesn't say anything. Rashi is not there just to add commentary for the sake of adding commentary or adding midrash. The pasuk says, the Yidden, they lift up their eyes, they see Mitzrayim is traveling, they're scared, they scream out to Hashem. Why does Rashi have to say anything? What isn't understood in the pasuk that Rashi has to add his commentary? That's number one.
Good question.
Number two, the psukim that Rashi brings are strange. By Avram it says, El Hamokim Asher Omad Sham. This is a reference that it says that he went to the place where he stood yesterday to daven. Why doesn't he bring down for the pasuk that happened yesterday? This is when Avram stood and davened for Snoim. It says the next day he went back to the El Hamokim Asher Omad Sham. Well, in the Torah it says very clearly that he davened for Hashem on behalf of the people of Snoim. Why are you giving the next pasuk? By Yitzchak it says Losuach Basada. There's a pasuk that says Vayetar Yitzchak El Hashem. When Yitzchak didn't have any children, he davens to Hashem very strongly. Why? That's a very clear pasuk. Vayifka b'makim also. We have Yaakov also davens later. Vayimer Yaakov Elokei Avi Avram. These are you realize none of these psukim are very clear about davening.
Doesn't say anything.
Asher Amat Sham Lasuach Basada. Vayifka b'makim. None of them say clearly davening, and there are other psukim which is very clear from their context as davening. Why is he bringing down these psukim? And also the word umnus is a strange thing. Rashi says the Yidden sees the profession of their forefathers. It's a strange word to use. So, as is the Rebbe's style, and the Rebbe also has other questions, but we're going to leave it at that. We know the Rebbe, 3 questions aren't enough. For Rashi Sikha has to have usually many more than that. And the Rebbe will introduce one idea which sheds light on the whole thing. What is really bothering Rashi? The Yidden, they were assured by Hashem that the Eibishter, right, Allah eschamani Mitzrayim, and right, Vevesi escham ala aretz, we're bringing it to the land, right? They knew Hashem had assured them everything will be fine. So what are you davening for? Why are you davening? If you believe what Hashem said, then don't daven. If you don't believe what Hashem said, then why daven? It's a catch-22. So what's this Vayitzaku? What are they crying out to? What are they screaming out to Hashem for? So to resolve this issue, Rashi says, yeah, they had total emunah. In fact, as we see later, what does Rashi say? Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'yiso. So what does Rashi say on that? Ein lahem, they should travel, right? Kedai zechus aviseyem v'hemuna sheheminu bi v'yatzu. The emunah that the Yidden have is enough. The Yamsuf, they didn't have emunah. So why are they davening? Because that was the profession of their Avos. The Avos davened. They always daven. Things are good, they daven. Things are bad, they daven. So now also, why are the Yidden davening? Not because they didn't believe, but because that's what a Yid does. A Yid davens. Yid is always davening. And that's why Rashi doesn't bring down all the psukim where it says that the Avos davened and there was a reason why they davened. When Yitzchak davened because he was childless. Yaakov davened because he's scared of Esav. Or Avram davened for Snoim. All of those are not a raya, because those are, we see that when you need something, you daven. No. Rashi brings psukim where we see that the Avos davened for no reason. Vayifka b'mokim. Why did Yaakov daven? He wasn't threatened. He davened because he davens. Yitzchak, vayisa Yitzchak lasuach basada. Why did he daven? Because he davened. When it says the next day that Avram went El Hamokim Asher Amad Sham, this is the day after. Why is he davening today? Because he davens. So it's amazing how you see the diuk. You see how precise it is. Every pasuk that Rashi brings, these are proofs not that the Avos davened when they were in need. Adrabah, these are proofs that the Avos davened even when they weren't in need. And that's what a Yid does. A Yid davens. So this obviously is quite relevant to what we're talking about over here, in terms of the Pnimius Halev, because this is Chassidim, we know davening is a big avodah, and a huge emphasis is placed on davening. You can argue that the Baal Shem Tov revived the concept of davening as a umanus, as a profession, a profession which we perfect and we work at. And it's not because we need anything. We've spoken about this on different occasions. It's because a Yid davens. Why? Because davening is geula. Because davening is the revelation of Pnimius Halev. But for that we need Hashem's help. Just like by the geula we need a Baal Shem Elekechas Lefavcha. In davening also we need Hashem's help to arrive at that geula. How do we get that help? So now we're finally going to get to the point of it, which is Ein Yisrael Negolin Ela B'Tzedakah. How are we zeichet to the geula? Sai, both the geula haklalis when Mashiach comes, and also the individual geula pratis, which happens through davening. For that we need to give tzedakah, which is why we give tzedakah before davening. And the explanation for that of why we need tzedakah will come in Mir Hashem next week. Good Shabbos, everyone.